Today on the Mr. Maple podcast, Tim and Matt interview Emmy-winning host of In the Garden, Bryce Lane.
Konnichiwa, y'all, and welcome to the Mr. Maple Show. We've got a special one for you here today. One of our favorite horticulture people, Emmy award-winning host of In the Garden with Bryce Lane. We got Bryce Lane. I got my brother Tim over there, and I'm Matt.
So everybody, this is an awesome podcast. I love getting to do this because Matt and I get to talk about some of our friends and we get to catch up with them. And that's really one of the hardest things whenever you run a business is, keeping up with your friends. And y'all get to jump in on this. So go ahead. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, give us a 5-star review. Find us on YouTube as well. Give us a subscribe. This airs on YouTube as well. Always hit that like button on YouTube and share this video with your gardening friends, y'all. We love Japanese maples. We know you do too. So remember, shop on MrMaple.com.
All right. Well, one of the things we love the most about doing our podcast is getting to catch up with people. So we've been trying to catch Bryce Lane here for a minute. Bryce, we've known you for quite a while. I was explaining to Sean, who we're interviewing, and I was like, Bryce is the quintessential horticulture host. He is that guy that when I think about explaining a plant or trying to explain a plant to somebody, I think what would Bryce Lane do? Literally, me and Tim to have this conversation when we're doing our show, we're like, how would Bryce Lane do this? And so we're honored to have you on here.
I'm honored to be here, guys. And it's kind of funny because it's like the shoe's on the other foot because, I remember coming up to y'all's nursery back in, I think it was early. It was like 2012. Maybe.
Yeah, it was early. Then. I'll tell you, we were so small. I was explaining this to our nursery manager the other day. When you filmed your episode, we were pouring the gravel for our road. We had to get them to quit dumping the gravel into the nursery. That's how small the nursery was. It was literally
the first loads of gravel ever.
We went up there and we're like, "Hey guys, quit dumping gravel." Bryce Lane's down here interviewing us, and it's coming through on the cameras.
Yeah, but I remember that, and that was that was the first time I'd ever been to y'all's place, and you guys were so nervous. And here I was trying to calm y'all down and, this is not going to be any big deal. And, Simone and Sonia, producer and videographer, they were great to work with.
Oh my gosh, they were so kind. They made it all so much fun.
So it ended up being one of our best shows, to be able to feature y'all's nursery and, talk about Japanese maples and talk about plants. And I appreciate, I appreciate the comment about the quintessential host. The way I see myself within the horticultural realm, really, moreover, is as a cheerleader. Somebody who kind of pumps up what we do. I think it's really important to have that level of enthusiasm because there are so many incredible horticultural minds out there that just the two of you and the wealth of knowledge that you have just for the plants that you grow. But oftentimes it takes more than that. It takes people to go out and say, okay, look, you've got to get involved in this. Check this out. In fact, just when was it? Just a class I was teaching here at the Ralston Arboretum. Someone said, well, where can I find that plant? I said, first place you want to go is Mr. Maple.
Oh, thanks.
Oh yeah. I'm not on the payroll, but I am promoting you guys.
Selfishly, we used to run this game all the time because what our favorite thing was when Bryce was presenting at the statewide Master Gardener Conference. I think one time we were at the Rock Garden Conference, there speaking, and we were literally at tailgate markets back in those days. We were very small compared to what we do now. I mean, not that we're big now, but it was very small in those days. And so, one good sale could make or break your month right back then. This was, we depended on these sales. So our favorite thing ever was when Bryce Lane showed up in our booth after being the keynote speaker and bought something we had a lot of.
Or even better, when he took something to the keynote speaker.
Right. So Bryce would show up to our booth. I remember specifically him coming to our booth and buying some Acer japonicums. And he said, now, which ones do you have more of, guys? That's how much he cared about horticulture. He's like, now, which one do you like the most, and which one do you have? You need to sell some more of those. So Bryce would carry this up to the podium, set it on the podium, and I'm talking, 300 people in the audience. Well, we're a small tailgate nursery at this point, so when the doors open up after that speech, Oh my gosh, get ready. Here comes the business. People are running out. I want what Bryce Lane had. Give me 3 of those. What's your biggest one of the Japonicum that Bryce Lane got?
Well, I think this is I don't want this to sound boastful or what, but I think the secret to my success is that I'm a gardener.
Yeah.
And that although being a horticultural scientist and someone that's taught horticulture for years, but through the lens of having been a rank and file gardener like a lot of the people that I teach. And so as a result, there's a connection there that I think they appreciate, because it's, he's not just talking about what's the right thing to do.
Right.
He then goes and talks about what he does. And it's not always the same thing. It's not always in line with what the literature says is the right thing to do in the garden, as much as it is, hey, I'm a gardener, I'm going to try this because I'm emotionally connected to this idea, even though the science may be pointing in a different direction. And we wouldn't be sitting in this building here at the J.C. Ralston Arboretum if it weren't for people like J.C. Ralston who pushed the envelope, where the literature would say, you can't do that. And all of a sudden, he would do it, and there would be parts that could be done. I mean, if you walk around this arboretum today, you're going to see agaves growing that have been growing for years. And of course, in the nursery industry, for instance, agaves, when I first came to NC State back in the 1980s,
no way that grew, right?
There was no market for that group of plants because, it's too warm, it's too humid, it's too wet. Right. And JC, I remember he came back. This is way back in the early 1980s, shortly after I got here. Came back with some agaves he had collected from up in the mountains in Mexico, and he planted them in different places in the arboretum, and most all of them died except 1 or 2. And so he figured, well, those species, those varieties were the ones that might have some promise here in North Carolina. So what did he do? He went back and he got more, brought them back, the same ones, brought them back, planted them, and they all died, except for the 2 that he had planted the first time. Now, JC's probably was one of the last observational scientists, where he had this incredible ability to pay attention to things and come up with conclusions without actually doing a scientific experiment, come up with a hypothesis, test that, using the scientific method. And oftentimes was criticized because he was more observational than he was, a traditional, no, I shouldn't even say traditional, using that scientific method. It occurred to him that the agaves that he planted, it had nothing to do with their identity. It had everything to do with the environment where they were planted. Turns out they were either planted in a mounded area or in an area that drained so well that the conclusion was, okay, well, there are a number of agaves that'll grow in North Carolina, provided that you keep their roots dry in the wintertime.
That's one of the things I love most about the J.C. Ralston. It's got that history, but there's so many great plants in this arboretum. I mean, I was telling Mark, we did a podcast with him, but I can come here. I've been here 100 plus times. I've been probably 200 plus times. I see new plants every single time I come here that shock and awe me that I didn't even notice. How did I not notice this tree? It's big. Like, how did I get past this? This is right in my alley. How did I miss this?
It's a good point. It's a good point. In fact, we were just talking right before we started. I was teaching a class of plants with winter interest in December, right before the holidays, night class here at the Arboretum. And I was coming in for the last class, and I was walking through the parking lot, which I've walked through, I don't know, thousands of times. Mm-hmm. And I look over, and here's this small tree that the fall color on it is incredible. And my first thought was, I missed that Perodia. Wait, how come I haven't seen it, right? So I walked up and looked at it and went, wait a minute, it's not. It's something else. And so thank goodness for the labeling, right? Psychoperodia, this hybrid, a natural hybrid between an Iranian plant and a Chinese plant, right? And Psychoperodia semi-decidua purple haze. There's even a cultivar of this thing, right? And who would have ever thought you could have a semi-deciduous or semi-evergreen tree that would fall color up like that? The fall color is incredible. So, like you heard me say, does it propagate from cuttings, and can I get some cuttings of this plant? Because
that's another thing that Ralston's great for too, is sharing.
Oh, it is. It really is. That's what, it was founded on the idea that anything valuable that was found here or that was discovered or that was growing here needed to be in the hands of the people that grow them and do so without having to pay for it.
And even those, when you're talking about plants that are semi-deciduous that have good fall color, for us, Fabry can have good fall color, but more specifically, Acer oblongum. That has phenomenal fall color for us in Western North Carolina. And
there are plants from here that stay pretty much evergreen here in this zone, and we get a little fall color changes on them, which are, it makes them more deciduous than semi-deciduous in our area, but they still make it.
So let me ask you, for those plants that are like that, and this is a question I've got to find out about the Psychoporodia too. So when you get that distinct fall color, are those the leaves that are going to ultimately fall off? Or are they the ones that are going to stay back on? There's a deep, rich burgundy color in Psychoporodia. I think those leaves are the ones that are going to remain, and the ones that are more yellow and red ultimately end up falling off.
We have to, with the maples, I know with those two species, we have to maintain a dormancy because you don't want them, they will drop. And so once they start to drop, if you're not careful, you'll get new flushes right behind that. It'll be the most susceptible to the new cold. So you have to maintain a little bit of a dormancy after that without over activating them again. So the fall color, they do tend to drop right after that for us, but with great results. I mean, they can stay dormant for quite a while, even though they're not expected to. You just got to not get them there too quickly afterward.
Right. And for me, I like a lot of the maples that may be, more semi-evergreen that can drop needles or drop leaves during the winter and then re-leaf, because you get a restart on all the foliage.
Exactly.
And sometimes if the foliage gets damaged or for whatever reason, you've got to restart in the spring. And a lot of people didn't realize that many of these maples that were evergreen could actually handle the mountains of Western North Carolina, and they didn't realize that they would just go deciduous.
Well, it's interesting about that, because the concept of evergreen, being that I teach, I'm still teaching at State. I teach an introductory class in horticulture for non-majors. And so the level of...
What a way to get to horticulture.
Oh my gosh.
You got Bryce Lane teaching your class. That don't make more horticulture majors than any class ever.
Well,
you got a superstar there. Like, here's a toe in the water, kids.
But
we got Bryce Lane for you.
You're very kind. But I must tell you, 18 to 24-year-olds are always looking for the shortest path, the least difficult path, let's put it that way. And my class meets a requirement, an elective requirement. It's called a non-laboratory science requirement, okay? So you can imagine the wide diversity of majors that are in a class where they're going to get credit for a science class without having to take a lab. And so I've got a wide array of majors represented, and an equally wide array of level of interest. Usually there's about 10 to 15% of, it's a class of about 100 people. And I get about 10, 15% who are there because they're interested in plants. They're interested in gardening. And then there's a marginal, maybe 20% that they're not sure whether they are or they aren't, or they've fallen prey to the latest social media, the one horticultural social media phenomenon is houseplants, right? And it's just going crazy. And so now I'm getting maybe 20% of those people, they're either thinking about or want to grow their first houseplant. Okay, well, that's fine. Everybody else is taking it because it fulfills a requirement. And so my goal in that class isn't to convert everyone, although when and if that happens, it's really cool, because you see that light bulb go on, and the next thing you know, it's wonderful. But moreover, what I'm trying to accomplish with those students is that by the end of the semester, I want them to walk out into the natural world, walk out into the world and look at it differently through the lens of a scientific approach to gardening. They may never, ever take up gardening as a hobby. However, they'll be better citizens in their communities because they understand root growth in trees in urban areas.
What a lucky group of students is all I can say. My gosh, if that's your entry level in as Bryce Lane, that's pretty cool. So Bryce, we were talking about, I said I thought you were one of the quintessential hosts, and I think probably what comes across from that is the passion, but also the sincerity that we get from you. And there's a sincerity when you're talking about stuff. I mean, there's a trustfulness you have just to you as a demeanor. Like, I listen to you and I'm like, that makes sense. Like, there's just this level of that. Where does that passion come from? Where did your passions in horticulture start? Is it something you had at an early age, or is it something that developed over time?
It's interesting. It's a great question. I grew up in Western Massachusetts, so I'm originally from New England. My dad worked at a university. He wasn't a professor. He worked in the development office. And as a kid growing up, I was a typical, back in the late 60s, early 1970s, I'd come home from school, you change your clothes, your mom would say, where are you going? I'm going out to play. She'd say, be home by dark. And so by virtue of the culture of that era, I spent countless hours outside. I was a Boy Scout, so that kept me outdoors even more and became more familiar with the natural world, if you will. But was I a plant/gardening geek? No, my mom was a gardener, so she'd toil in a rock garden. She'd have a flower garden, that type of thing. My dad was a yardner. And what that means is if you're a yardner, that means that you care deeply about the way that your property presents, but you don't necessarily enjoy any of the work that needs to be done for that to look that way, right? And so he was a yardner, and I was firstborn, which meant that I wanted to please my parents. Being the oldest, I was the first one in the line of, okay, we've got chores to do. Bryce,
tell me about it.
Right? You understand that? And but I also was a pretty enthusiastic kid working with his father. Right? I enjoyed doing that. And my dad was brilliant in helping to cultivate a work ethic in me. In that, one, he said, yes, you have to do this. But second of all, he would always tell me, look, your attitude is a choice. So you can choose to be happy about this, or you can choose to not be happy about it. And believe it or not, what you choose is going to affect how you feel about it when you're doing it and when you're done doing it.
That's one of the greatest lessons in life.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I'll never forget, we get 3 cords of wood delivered to the driveway in this house. And my dad always liked to put the firewood in the garage to keep it dry. And so Saturday morning, get up and he says to me, come on downstairs. We're going to stack these 3 cords of wood. And I said, I don't want to. And he said, what? You never tell me you don't want to. I said, no, I don't want to. Ask my brother. My brother's 5 years younger, got away with murder.
You're preaching to the choir over here. Oh my gosh, man.
Sorry, Tim. I didn't mean to throw you under the bus. I'm talking about my brother, not
5 years younger as well.
Not Matt's brother, but no. And so I went down there and my dad said, look, I'll make a deal with you. He said, you give me 15 minutes. And at the end of those 15 minutes, if you want to stop stacking wood, you can stop. I said, that's a great deal. 15 minutes and I'm done. He said, yeah, but one condition. I said, what's that? He said, I want everything you do, everything you say, and everything you are about stacking wood for those 15 minutes to be on the positive side. I want you to have a good attitude about it. I want you to work hard, get it done. He said, and if you'll do that after 15 minutes, you can go. Right? 3 hours later, we had it all stacked.
Oh, that's awesome.
Because after 15 minutes, he said, okay, your time's up. You want to go? I was so into the project now. Right? So sometimes, you hear fake it till you make it. Yeah, that's a cliche, but there's some truth to that because I made a decision to be positive about that. All right. So I'm digressing big time, and I'm sorry for that because I'm not directly answering your question.
No, that's just good advice. I will use that with my children one day. That's brilliant.
And I learned a good lesson from that. Well, when I was 16, my dad told me I had to pay for half my college education. And back in that day, with the income that my parents had, that was not a choice to teach me a good lesson as much as it was a necessity, right? Mm-hmm. And so at that point, he said, and so you're 16, time to get a job. And so I went out looking for jobs. And McDonald's had a job for a French fryer. And a local garden center in a nearby town had a job for a car loader. And the car loader position paid way less than the McDonald's position. But I got a job at the Hadley Garden Center in Hadley, Massachusetts, being a car loader because I preferred to be outside rather than inside. Who knew, right? And I'll tell you guys, I was the best car loader at the Hadley Garden Center.
Oh, I believe it.
I mean, people would ask for me. See, I was strong enough. I could lift 2 bags of composted cow manure and put them in Mrs. Jones's trunk of her Cadillac without ripping the plastic bag on the trunk latch, right? So that got me promoted. I got promoted to fruit tree potter because we pot up hundreds and hundreds of fruit trees in the wintertime from Stark Brothers Nursery in upstate New York. They'd come in a coffin size, box, and we pot them up and merchandise them for spring sales. And so I was so good at fruit tree potting, I got to merchandise, and ultimately my first sales experience in horticulture was selling fruit trees in the springtime at the Hadley Garden Center. And that got me promoted to nursery sales. And so through that, and I'm a sophomore in high school. I learned a couple things about myself. One, I learned that I thought plants were pretty cool. And so that was the beginning of my education in horticulture was experience. Mm-hmm. And that experience led me to a level of passion for plants. Okay. The second thing I learned, and maybe the equally important, was that I loved talking to people about the plants that I loved. And to that end, that's what caused me to change my major as I pursued college. And my career goals, can't believe I'm sharing this publicly, but my career goals back then was when I got ready to graduate from college, I wanted to go and become the assistant manager at the Hadley Garden Center. I had already married. I married way young, to a high school sweetheart. And both our parents lived in the same area. And so I thought my life was set. I was going to work at the Hadley Garden Center. We were going to be near family. And the owner of the Hadley Garden Center, the late Ed Macno, retired military. Ed Macno, he's retired military, and he was also Army Reserves. And guess where he would go every summer to do his 1 month of service? Just take a wild guess.
I'm going to guess somewhere in this region.
He went to a place called Fayetteville, North Carolina. Now, I'm a 16, 17-year-old kid. I grew up in New England. The South, as far as I'm concerned, is the South. It's a foreign land. And so here was the owner of the company. We were all excited because when he was away, things calmed down a little bit at the store. And I thought, well, he's going off to another country that's called Fayetteville, and it's down there in North Carolina. I mean, the irony of that ultimately I would end up spending a majority of my life and my career here in North Carolina is really quite fascinating. But Ed told me when I got ready to graduate college that he would not hire me.
Wow.
And
it was a gift though, probably, right?
Well, and I asked him, I challenged him. I said, why? Am I not a good worker? He said, no, you're a great worker. I said, well, do I not have the skills and abilities to do the job? He said, no, that's not it at all. He goes, you have potential in areas far beyond, far different than, and he wasn't belittling retail horticulture, don't get me wrong, but what he was doing was he saw something in me I didn't even see in myself at that time. And so between his encouraging me and then my major professor at the University of Massachusetts also suggesting that, I had this ability to be able to communicate horticultural things, communicate plants, that kind of thing. I found myself in graduate school looking to increase my education so that I ultimately would be a teacher at a technical school, community college, something like that. I had no desire to dig into the research and ultimately work at a university.
Well, the education, the years you've provided from that one, deciding to work at a garden center and put some trees in cars, and what that leads to. You've inspired, generations of people through your TV show, through your education.
Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of our viewers know you through In the Garden with Bryce Lane. We mentioned that we were on that show, but how many seasons was that on?
So we did In the Garden with Bryce Lane. It was North Carolina PBS. We did 11 seasons, 175 30-minute programs.
I mean, go back and find those, y'all. They're gold. They're gold.
It was a learning curve that I never, ever expected to be on, but one that I would not trade for anything. I learned so much, and I got to meet, great people like yourselves. I got to travel, and it was above and beyond my regular job at NC State. In fact, the university called it overload, and it was indeed overload. But it was what a special opportunity to be able to promote gardening and promote horticulture and plants,
See, no one ever wanted to put us on PBS, so we just had to do it ourselves. So we just made our own show to copy you. But that was such a cool thing to be on early on for us. Like, I don't know why. Honestly, we were just honored you came to us. We were at tailgates at that point. So the fact that you came and interviewed people on our level, we're forever grateful. That was one of our first breaks we ever had, where it was like, wow, a PBS show was coming here to our nursery. Like, so we're dumping gravel while you're there. It was such a big break for us, and so many people found us from that. We're just forever grateful for that. And I can't say enough fine things about your staff and that show. We had such a good time. It'll forever be one of our moments we cherish, where it was like, somebody came to talk to us. Like, we're in the backyard potting, and it was like, Bryce Lane's coming here. We were over the moon about this. Yeah. It really was a big change in our whole careers in a big way.
Well, that whole Western swing, as we called it, we were looking for, one of the main, the whole goal of the show was to communicate to people that gardening is something that anybody can do. Mm-hmm. But in order to do it, I was committed to making sure that they learned the right way, mm-hmm. but also learned the truth about how difficult or how easy it would be. And to that end, I felt it was really important to show people, especially in North Carolina, since it was a North Carolina show, to show people who kind of behind the scenes. So you go to a local garden center, you go here and you see this plant. Do you have any earthly idea how it got to that point? Mm-hmm. Think about it. When J.C. Rawlson came to NC State in 1976, a typical plant palette at an independent garden center consisted of about 40 different species of woody ornamentals. Mm-hmm. Now think about that. That's 1976. And today you can't even put a number on the diversity and the variety of plants. I mean, look how many cultivars of Japanese maple that MrMaple sells, right?
Maybe too many. I don't know, we're a good example.
That's a degree of preference, I think, more so than anything else. But my point is, it's like, okay, so I wanted people in North Carolina to understand what goes on behind the scenes, so that they have a greater appreciation, because all too often you hear people talk about how expensive plants are. They'll spend $150 on a pizza party for their family of 12 and not think anything about it from an economic perspective, mm-hmm. right? And that pizza goes in and then it goes out later on, and there's virtually nothing to show for it but a good memory. Okay, so if you compare, what could you buy for $150 that would be value added to your own person, value added to your property, value added to the art that you're trying to create, and it's quote unquote permanent. And I use that word loosely because depending on what kind of garden you are, permanent means different things. In order to understand why something costs a certain amount, it'd probably be a good idea to figure out, or at least be able to understand how it got to that point. Yeah. And so, another goal of the show was to communicate to the citizens of North Carolina what a rich commerce base that we have in this state, and all the cool things that people do from a green industry side that go on. I mean, that same trip, we went and did, Frank Patillo's place, the turf. How many people know how sod is produced, just so that they have an appreciation for the kind of effort that goes in. And then we were always looking for North Carolina State connections as well. So yeah, it was picking you guys was an easy one because you could see that.
I know that you love Japanese maples. I know that that's something that you seem to just always having a love for. Where did that come from?
Well, pretty simple. The JC's goal at the Arboretum was that wherever you stand in the Arboretum, you see at least 2 Japanese maples. And that was something he articulated, and he articulated it to me. And, JC was a friend, he was a mentor, he was a colleague. And I just took that and ran with it. Now, I only have a 1/4 acre, but I decided I wanted people to be able to see at least 3 from anywhere they stand in my property. And so that came along. And the other thing, the other individual I want to name is from Cameron, North Carolina. His name was Rex McDonald, and Rex had this Japanese maple nursery down in Cameron, North Carolina, and he grew these trees in grow bags, and then would let the roots. These grow bags were perforated, and so the roots could extend beyond the bags. But when it came time to dig them, he would dig them just outside the bag. It was brilliant. And he grew some big trees. Well, he gave me a couple of pretty good sized specimens, and we'd go down and visit his nursery frequently. So, between Rex and you guys, I mean, that just solidified and reaffirmed, Japanese maples are great. And then being able to garden in the same place for 40 years, and I've lived in the same house for 40 years, I've learned a lot about Japanese maples in that, and I'm not telling you guys anything you don't already know, is in central North Carolina, Japanese maples are weeds. I mean, and I say that they're in a positive way. They aren't as slow growing as everybody thinks. They're not as fragile as everyone thinks.
Yeah.
They are tough plants. There's no reason why anybody, and talk about diversity. All you got to do is go to your website. You can see the diversity of foliage, fall color, habit of growth. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And so to me, it's a no-brainer. There shouldn't be a garden without at least one Japanese maple.
I think if you go to our YouTube channel and you go back really, really far, we have a video when you visited us, and we talk about trees that are in the J.C. Ralston Arboretum. This is one of our many attempts to think we're going to start doing YouTube. So if you go back, our channel's been around since like 2011 or something. But there's a video. I mean, it had to be like 2013 or 14. It's been a minute. And we talked to you about some of the trees here at the J.C. Ralston in front of our cell phone. And then we came here and filmed clips of the trees and added it to it with our cell phone. So there's a really old school. Wow. I don't think the audio is very good, but there's a video of us talking about the J.C. Ralston probably around 2013 or cool. That time frame. But we've learned so much from you and your passion. And I really like to harp on that sincerity of what you're talking about. That passion comes through. But the approach you take to it, especially the approach of wanting to show everybody, the behind the scenes part of it, I think you're ahead of your time on that too. I mean, that's something that I think is really more of an integral part of what people want to show now. Like that behind the scenes, this is how it's made. I mean, it's like what is it, Dirty Jobs before? But it's like Nursery Jobs. That's a good show right there. Like
there you go.
All the hardship that goes into this ahead of time, though.
And I think one of the other things that we try to take as much from your show and from what we've learned from you is when you have something that someone's taught you, you try to do your best to pass that on to other gardeners. And we try to do that as much as we can too here on the Mr. Maple Show, trying to say, hey, here's where we've made mistakes. Here's where we've been successful. And this is the right way to do things. And a lot of that came from us understanding from the way you portrayed yourself and the way you did everything with your In the Garden with Bryce Lane. Well,
the level of sincerity, you guys are very kind to identify that in me, but I would just say that I've got a mirror up, because that's something that was very evident when we came up and featured your nursery way back, that the level of sincerity and enthusiasm that you have for what you do, that's actually attached to every maple you sell. And metaphorically speaking, but I really believe that, I don't care so much that people become gardeners as much as they develop an understanding and appreciation for what goes on, because how can you do something if you don't have that level of appreciation and awe? Much of my sincerity and my enthusiasm comes out of gratitude. I found something that I found my gift when I was a young man, and I was able to use that gift my entire life and still am. And that, to me, it's the gift of teaching. It just happens to be connected to, this green industry in a big way. Mm-hmm. Oh, it's connected in my life in other areas, but that's what that's where it resonates the most. And so out of that comes this immense gratitude that really translates into that level of enthusiasm and sincerity that I bring to it. Because all too often we see out there disingenuous business people, mm-hmm. disingenuous educators, people that are in it in order to just promote themselves and not promote what it is they represent. And it matters.
That's why I said those kids are so lucky that are in an introductory class with Bryce. Like, you're one of the best horticulture communicators of all time, like in my mind. I mean, heck, I remember when you came and did our episode, I lived in my parents' basement. We were selling at tailgate markets. We had like 6 greenhouses. And I remember shaking in my parents' yard, and you're like, you're gonna do fine at this. Like, calm down, Matt. You know this stuff. You know what you're talking about. Just tell me what you know. And I'm literally there on your show. I'm like, if you go watch that episode, I'm probably like shaking in my boots. And we stood out there in my parents' garden. He talked to us, and we're like, and it just stuck with us. I mean, if we're going to be on camera, or even when we're going to talks, when we would speak at the 40-year J.C. Ralston, one of the things like blew us away. Why'd they have us? I mean, we were so honored to be able to be at it. But when they had the 40 years of J.C. Ralston, they had to speak. When Tim and I talk to each other, we get the luck of being tandem. So we get to like, he talks and I talk. So it certainly helps when you get tongue tied, you got the other guy to jump in there. But our motto is always be like Bryce Lane. Like, I'm not even joking. Like, that's literally something we tell each other daily. Like, now we're like, because there's a sincerity in your level of communication and there's an authenticity to it. And I think that's why those kids are so lucky. There's an authenticity to what they're getting there that it's just, super valuable.
Well, people don't make decisions to change their behavior by the facts that they learn. People make decisions to change their behavior. And when I say change their behavior, it could be what car I'm going to buy, what plants I'm going to buy. Am I going to take up gardening? Am I going to join a gym and try to work out? People make decisions based on the emotional connection they have to that subject or that information. And the way that you develop an emotional connection with people is to be yourself. Right. And so if you're genuine about what you are saying about the very things you guys represent, the plants you grow, everything you do, and that sincerity comes across, people make decisions based on the fact that they connect with that. They're not going to often connect with the facts that you tell them about the Japanese maples that you grow. That's important stuff, but that's not what sells these plants. I can't tell you how many times I've heard, I love buying maples. I love buying Japanese plants. I love buying plants from the Nichols brothers. Well, why? Because of the quality of the plant that they produce and because of the technology that they use for that plant? No, they never say that. They say, because those guys are bonkers over the plants that they sell. They love the plants. They love everything about it. And I said, are you sure they're just not putting you on? No, they are the most genuine, down-to-earth guys. We want to hear what they have to say because they believe and they're all in for what they're doing.
Well, that's certainly something that comes across from your ability to communicate. Like that's something we've always admired. And I think you're one of horticulture's best communicators. I mean, it just doesn't.
Thank you.
That's something we need more of. It's an art form to be able to take your passion and to display it and to explain it and to make it palatable. And what a treasure. Like I said, these guys, these unknowing walking into entry-level class people have, they don't know that they're kind of like the Master Yoda here, like teaching them, like you're getting the advanced, like you're getting the good stuff right out the gate here.
Okay, so
I'm just saying, those guys got no idea. They're walking into it like.
So maybe what I need to do is have one or both of you come on the first day of class every semester.
I'm going to be like,
tell them what hyped up. Tell them what they're getting because I, yesterday was the first day of class. I had 2 people asleep in the back, and
slap that phone out of their hand, man. You get some respect. This is Bryce Lane up here, buddy.
Well, again, it's not about me as much as it is about just about the situation, about them. You try to put yourself in the place of an 18 to 24-year-old post-COVID going to college.
Yeah,
it's a whole new world out there, and all too often, those of us in the ivory tower like to complain about what's wrong with students today, and there's nothing wrong with students today. They're incredibly smart and incredibly capable, but there are a lot of layers of interference that have come along, and I'm not blaming it on a pandemic, on the social division that we experienced. It's a perfect storm that results in kids who just want to be told that from the professor's side that they believe that they can do it, and that this is something that will bring them value. But you've got to be relevant. If you're not relevant, I don't care what kind of photograph you show, anything. If you do not explain to them why it's important for them to understand this.
I think there's a longingness for that again, though. I mean,
doubt.
people have been in the video game era. Children now, I mean, I'm 42. Right? I grew up with video games, but my kids, I have 3 under 6. Like, kids grow up completely engulfed in a digital world. And you know, you hear the expression from younger people, touch grass, right? That means like go get back involved in reality, right? Touch grass. Well, it's like touch dirt, right? I think there's a longingness from especially that generation for something tangible, for real stuff, for plants, for now if it comes in through garden, you know, through house plants, great, but there's this whole world that they get opened up to. And I think they want that kind of stuff. We have a lot of younger people that work at our nursery, and it's like, it doesn't take a lot for people to get fired up. Like, it doesn't take a lot. Like, they watch this for a minute and they're, you know, learn a couple plants and they're like, I want to do this. How do I get involved in this?
Now, I know that for anybody that wants to touch grass, wants to touch dirt, you've got some classes coming up.
Yeah, I do. I teach a class at NC State every semester. Being semi-retired, I still have my toe in that water there. But the relationship I have here at the J.C. Ralston Arboretum is wonderful. I've been teaching night classes here at the Arboretum now for 8 or 9 years, and we've got a great thing going when it comes to the educational opportunities. I know, Bree Arthur, she teaches classes here as well. We've got a number of really cool people that teach a number of classes.
What an opportunity.
Yeah. Oh, it's great. And so typically I'll teach a class on Monday nights from 6 to 6:30 to 8:30. So it's 2 hours. And the classes range from being 4-week classes to 8-week classes, depending on the topic. And so, for instance, coming up the end of January, I'll be doing a 4-week class on understanding and improving garden soils. I'm convinced that there are 2 reasons why plants die in the landscape. 1, people don't understand how light influences plant growth, and 2, people don't understand how the soil influences plant growth. And so, if you can develop an acumen in both those areas, you'll be a better gardener, and you'll have more success growing your plants. And so, this is a 4-week. We're going to, pardon the pun, guys, I got to do it. We're going to dig deep into soils. We're going to talk about the physical properties, the biological properties, the chemical properties of soils, and then what can gardeners do to improve and maintain their soils. So we got that. I've got a class, an 8-week class later on in the spring on gardening to attract wildlife, with all this talk about attracting birds and pollinator gardens. And I wanted to put together a comprehensive class where, if you're interested in attracting and managing wildlife, what are the basic principles that you need to follow? And not just, oh, you ought to have a pollinator garden because pollinators are cool. Mm-hmm. No, the real reasons why, and then how you can go about doing that. And then just later on, early summer, I've got an 8-week class called The History of Horticulture. Oof. How what things people, that civilizations, cultures, and people have done since the beginning of time, how that's influenced what we call horticulture/gardening today, and that's going to be a great class.
I wish I was closer right now. These sound great.
Matt, the good news is that they're hybrid classes. So I have face-to-face students, and we also live Zoom. And so you can be anywhere in the world and sign up for that class.
What's the best way people can find these?
Best way is to go to the jcralstonarboretum.com, go to the or jcra.ncsu.edu. Go to the Ralston Arboretum website, go to calendar, and you look at events, and they're listed. All those events are listed, and all those classes are listed, amongst others as well.
Take advantage of that. That sounds amazing.
I heavily encourage you to sign up for Bryce's classes. If you see him speaking somewhere, one, ask him to come speak somewhere. But if you see him speaking somewhere, I've been to enough Bryce's talks. You get emotionally invested in his talks. Like, you leave, like, you're choked up a little bit sometimes. Like, Bryce really has a way of just getting you involved in it and getting you fired up about it. You'll come away with a new passion. Like, it just is. If you can take these classes, I highly recommend it. Highly recommend it. And any way they can find you on social media or anything like that? Is there anything?
I have a website that never gets managed. It's brycehLane.com, and on that website, it's just a kind of a comprehensive list of all the different talks I do when I get invited to go speak. So if people are interested in having me, inviting me to come, they can go there as a starting point. It's a place to connect as well. I do have a YouTube channel, and actually I've used it more for utilitarian purposes for my NC State classes, but I'm finding that anything I seem to put on YouTube seems to get a lot of attention. And so this spring, my intention is to ramp up and start doing, 12 to 15 minute little garden ditties and try to get those out there.
I need that in my life. So that channel, just Bryce Lane.
Yeah.
I already subbed to it, so I know. So go check it out, guys. He's the best. Like, he simply is. I love Bryce. His passion is contagious, and go find him on something, follow him, get involved, ask him to come speak to your garden club because you're going to absolutely love it. You're going to get fired up, get involved in his classes. Come see him at the JC Ralston. Make your son or grandson or granddaughter join his class. They're going to get a new appreciation for horticulture.
It's been an honor and a privilege having you on today. It was such a big moment for us years ago when you had us come and be part of your PBS show. And it's an honor and privilege to have you on our podcast today. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. And guys, the honor is all mine.
We appreciate you. Thank you so much. Take care.
God bless.
And have a great day.